Wait, what do you mean I'm not in the will? I asked, my voice barely holding itself together. The lawyer didn't flinch. He just adjusted his glasses and repeated, "Your mother left the entire estate to your brother. The house, the savings, the land, it's all in his name." The room went silent. My brother, Travis, sat there like a king who just won a war he didn't even fight. He didn't look at me. Not once. Outside, the sun was shining. Birds were chirping like nothing had happened. But inside that wood-paneled office, something shattered. I looked down at the floor. Not because I was weak, but because I knew I couldn't explode. Not yet. So I smiled, tight, quiet, and said the only thing I could think of. Noted. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was the oldest child of Evelyn and Robert Bennett, born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. I was 38 when my mother passed away, and I thought I knew how grief worked. I'd buried my father 5 years earlier, taken care of my mom every day since, and managed everything from her medications to her meals. But nothing prepares you for the kind of grief that comes wrapped in legal paperwork and betrayal. Growing up, it was always me and my younger brother, Travis. He was the golden boy. Charming, good-looking, always with a new plan, a new girl, a new excuse. My mom used to say, "He's just trying to find his way." Meanwhile, I was the one who stayed, after school, after college, after life started calling me somewhere else. I never left. I turned down a job in New York to stay and help after my dad's first heart attack. I took night shifts at the local bakery and morning classes at the community college. Eventually, I became a licensed nutritionist and started a small health food catering business from our kitchen. That kitchen. God. I can still see it. The pale yellow walls, the dent in the third drawer, the tiny herb garden outside the window. I built my dream there, one turmeric smoothie and almond biscotti at a time. And when Mom got diagnosed with lupus, I cut my client list in half just to be home more. She never asked. I just did. And Travis? He called on holidays. Sometimes. When Mom got worse, the house needed repairs. I learned how to seal windows, unclog a garbage disposal, paint a ceiling without ruining the floor. Every corner of that home had my fingerprints, my breath, my exhaustion embedded in it. She used to say, "Claire, if I could give you the whole world, I would." And I believed her. One night, about a year before she passed, we were sitting on the porch, sipping chamomile tea. The sky was soft with stars, and she looked so tired, so fragile. "You know," she whispered, "you're the reason I've lasted this long." I remember my chest tightening. I said, "Don't say things like that." But she smiled and took my hand. "Promise me, Claire. No matter what happens, take care of yourself. Don't let this house become a burden. Make it yours, make it happy again." I nodded, not knowing those words would echo in me later, in a lawyer's office, while her signature told another story entirely. I thought I understood our bond. I thought love, time, sacrifice meant something. But love, I've learned, doesn't always speak in actions. Sometimes, it hides behind old patterns and inherited blindness. The house wasn't just a house. It was my mother's memory, my childhood, my future stability. I didn't want a mansion. I wanted that home. The kitchen where she taught me how to make pecan pie. The garden where she first planted lavender and told me to rub it between my palms whenever I felt overwhelmed. The creaky staircase that Travis never fixed because he was never there long enough to hear it creak. So when the lawyer read that Travis would receive the estate, I didn't just lose a house. I lost years of choices I'd made in faith. But here's the part that cut deeper than anything. 3 days before the will reading, Travis called and said, "I'll see you at Mom's memorial, sis. Let me know if you need help organizing anything." I had been handling everything, the funeral home, the flowers, the catering. He hadn't even shown up to the hospital the last few weeks. And yet he walked into the lawyer's office, smug, confident, as if he knew exactly what was about to unfold. Because he did. Later, I would find out he'd been visiting our mother secretly during her last lucid weeks. Whispering, persuading, pressuring. He'd brought her flowers, offered comfort, and reminded her of all those sacrifices he made in his youth. Lies mostly. And she, tired, confused, heavily medicated, had changed the will. Was she coerced? Manipulated? Maybe. But the law didn't care. Her signature was there. Witnessed. Notarized. So I sat in silence, my heart aching, my hands clenched under the table. And for the first time in years, I let a part of myself go quiet. No more explanations. No more bending. No more being the one who carried the load and asked for nothing in return. Because if this was the game Travis wanted to play, then I was done playing fair. The week after the will reading was a blur of tension wrapped in silence. I went back to the house, to my house, though legally it no longer was, and every step echoed like an accusation. I avoided Travis. He hadn't moved in yet, but his presence lingered in little ways. A box of protein bars on the kitchen counter, a set of keys left dangling from the old oak hook by the front door. It was like he already owned the place. But what Travis didn't know, what no one knew, was that I hadn't been blind. I'd felt something was off even before Mom passed. Her change in mood, her vagueness, the way she started talking about keeping the family together, even as she became more withdrawn. She'd started hiding letters, whispering when I entered the room. I chalked it up to illness, confusion. But now, in hindsight, it all made sense. So I did what I had to do. I started digging. And I found something. 2 months before her passing, I'd taken Mom to her bank to update a few things on her account. She'd been weak, and I'd driven her, wheeled her in, stayed by her side. That day, she'd asked the bank officer to help her open a safe deposit box. She looked me right in the eye and said, "I want this to stay private." I hadn't thought much of it then. Maybe she was storing jewelry or private letters. But now, after what had happened, I couldn't let it go. So, I went back to the bank. I had no legal claim, but I had charm, empathy, and a few truths they couldn't ignore. I was her caregiver. I told the branch manager, a middle-aged woman with soft eyes and tired hands. She set this up during our last visit. She was not in a good place near the end. I think there may have been coercion. I just need to know if anything's been changed in her records. That's all I'm asking. I don't know if it was the honesty in my voice or the fact that she saw something in my face that looked like grief she once carried herself, but she nodded slowly. "I'm not allowed to show you what's in the box," she said. "But I can confirm that something inside it was dated 3 weeks before the official will you're referring to." I blinked. "What kind of something?" She hesitated, then leaned in. It looked like a handwritten document. Sealed. Initialed. I only glanced as she deposited it. I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Can you tell me the box number?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not unless you're her executor." "Who is the executor?" Her fingers tapped the keyboard. Then she frowned. "It's not listed here as Travis." My heart kicked against my ribs. "It's you," she said quietly. "You're named in the earlier record." I almost burst into tears on the spot. But I held it in. Instead, I whispered, "Can I request a court order to open it?" "You can," she nodded. "And if what's inside is what you believe, it might be worth it." I thanked her, walked out of the bank into the blistering sun, and sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, just breathing. Then I called my lawyer, Diane Mercer, a woman I knew through a friend who described her as part attorney, part wrecking ball. She took the case the next morning. "Let's file for an injunction," Diane said. "If there's a conflicting will with a prior date, and you can argue mental decline and undue influence, we've got grounds." The court date was set for 10 days later. And during that time, I kept my mouth shut. I watched Travis strut into the house and talk about renovating and upgrading. He even brought over a real estate agent. She walked around with him taking notes while I stood quietly in the corner of the kitchen listening. "She says it could go for $500,000 easy," Travis boasted. "We'll sell, split it, unless you want to rent it from me?" I smiled, softly. "I'm good," I said. He smirked. "Didn't think so. Not really your style to fight back." "Oh, Travis. If only you knew." The court date arrived. Diane and I sat side by side in that bland beige room with flickering fluorescent lights. Travis showed up late, in a blazer that still had the tag thread dangling from the sleeve. He looked confused, annoyed, maybe even a little nervous. The judge was a no-nonsense woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a stare that could stop traffic. "Ms. Bennett," she said, "you've requested access to a secure asset belonging to your late mother. Do you have reason to believe its contents contradict the currently probated will?" "I do, Your Honor," I replied, standing tall. "And I have supporting evidence." We submitted the bank statement, the witness affidavit, the medical records showing Mom's decline, and finally, Diane's piece de resistance, a notarized letter from one of Mom's nurses stating that Travis visited frequently near the end, often alone, and that his tone was aggressively persuasive. The judge read everything carefully. Then, she ordered the box opened under court supervision. 3 days later, I stood inside that bank again, this time accompanied by Diane and a court officer. They opened the box. Inside was a thick envelope labeled in my mother's handwriting, "Claire, final will." My hands trembled as they removed it. The document was fully signed, notarized, and dated 3 weeks prior to the one Travis submitted. And this one? This one left the house, the business, and all personal belongings to me. Travis wasn't even mentioned. There was a separate letter addressed to both of us. In it she wrote, "Claire, you've been my strength. I want this home to be yours because you are this home. Travis, I love you, but I hope one day you understand why I made this choice." The court verified its authenticity. That same day, a new hearing was scheduled. And that's when I did it. I walked into the next courtroom, sat down across from Travis, and handed him a folder. "What's this?" he asked, frowning. "Something you should probably see before this gets embarrassing," I said, voice calm, lips just barely curling. He flipped it open. "Read." Froze. Then looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You forged it," he hissed. "No," I said. "She changed it. Again. Just not in your favor." Travis didn't take the news quietly. The moment we stepped out of the courthouse, he turned on me in the parking lot like a cornered animal. "You think this is over?" he snapped. "You think a piece of paper changes what Mom wanted?" I didn't flinch. "It does if that paper is signed, notarized, and witnessed, yes." He threw the folder onto the hood of his car. "You manipulated her. You were always the favorite. Just because you stuck around doesn't mean you deserved everything." I crossed my arms. "You're right. Sticking around doesn't earn you an inheritance. But showing up when it matters? Not faking loyalty? Caring? That counts." His jaw clenched. "You're a control freak, Claire," he spat. "You always have been. You wanted her to depend on you, so you could make her feel guilty for breathing." That one stung, but only for a second. Because the projection was so loud, I could practically hear his desperation echoing. "I think," I said slowly, "you're confusing control with commitment." He stormed off, muttering something about appealing the decision. I didn't follow. I didn't even look back. But the war wasn't over. Over the next week, I started receiving emails and calls from extended family, cousins, uncles, a couple of my mom's old church friends. Apparently, Travis had launched a little PR campaign. He told them I'd stolen the house, that I'd taken advantage of our mother while she was sick, that I'd manipulated the courts. One cousin, Emily, texted me, "I don't know what's going on between you and Travis, but maybe just split the house and be done with it." Split the house. Split the years I'd spent wiping up vomit, managing prescriptions, putting my business on hold, missing birthdays, anniversaries, relationships. I didn't reply. But not everyone was against me. 2 days after the smear campaign started, I got a call from Lana, Travis's ex-wife. We hadn't spoken in over 5 years. "Hey," she said. "I heard what happened. Mind if I stop by?" When Lana walked into the house, she looked around like she was revisiting a ghost town of memories. Her heels clicked across the same floors where she used to chase their toddler, Caleb, during holidays. "This place hasn't changed," she whispered. "Not much," I said. She looked at me. "I know what Travis is trying to do," she said. "He pulled the same tricks during our divorce. Weaponized sympathy. Painted me as unstable. You're not crazy, Claire. And you're not wrong." I blinked. Why are you telling me this? She smiled sadly. Because I wish someone had done it for me. Lana became my unexpected ally. She even agreed to write a character affidavit for court, describing how Travis had manipulated legal paperwork and lied under oath during their custody battle. Diane nearly cried when she read it. We were building a case not just for the will, but for Travis's pattern. In the meantime, Travis continued escalating. He showed up at the house unannounced one evening, drunk and loud, demanding to talk. I didn't let him in. You're seriously locking me out of my own house? He yelled through the door. It's not your house, I said calmly from the other side. And you're not welcome here until you respect that. You're going to regret this, he shouted. But the only thing I regretted was not installing security cameras sooner. The next morning, I filed a restraining order. That same week, I also found something else. While sorting through Mom's closet, I came across a stack of journals. Her handwriting, small and careful, filled page after page. At first, I hesitated to read them. They felt sacred, private. But I needed clarity. And maybe somewhere in those pages I could find it. One entry stopped me cold. Travis keeps asking about the house. He says it's too much for Claire, that I should think about fairness. But Claire is the one who gets me out of bed every morning, who laughs when I forget words, who holds my hand when the pain gets bad. I don't think Travis sees me anymore, just the property. Another. Some nights, I wake up afraid I've made the wrong choice. But then I hear Claire in the kitchen. She makes me turmeric tea and hums that old hymn. And I know who loves me without condition. I brought the journals to Diane. These are gold, she said. It's a paper trail of intent. No lawyer on earth can spin this. When we returned to court to finalize the will challenge, Travis arrived with a new lawyer. Slick, expensive, and visibly annoyed by the evidence we'd gathered. They tried everything, claimed undue influence, mental incompetence, even accused me of forging the journals. But when Lana testified, calm and composed, detailing how Travis had once forged her signature to drain their joint savings account, the courtroom turned. And when Diane submitted the medical records, the notarized earlier will, and the journals, well, it was over. The judge ruled in my favor. Final. Binding. Non-appealable. I officially inherited the house, the contents, the garden, the kitchen. But even more than that, I inherited clarity. Travis stormed out of the courtroom before the ruling was finished. He didn't look at me. He never said another word. And honestly, that silence was a gift. I didn't cry after the final court hearing. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the air in victory or collapse into my mom's arms in exhausted relief. I just breathed. It was a still, deep breath, the kind that travels all the way down into your belly and then quietly lets itself go, like a sigh from the soul. That moment didn't need drama. It needed silence. It needed acknowledgement. And it needed grace. The past 6 months had hollowed me out and filled me back up with things I never expected to carry: strength, clarity, rage, resilience, and an unfamiliar but calming detachment. I wasn't the same woman who'd once believed Tyler was her forever. I was now a woman who'd seen how fragile trust can be, how quickly love can sour when secrets mold in its corners. But I was also a woman who knew her worth. And with that new awareness came a long, unglamorous process: healing. I moved into a small apartment on the east side of Portland. It was modest, 2 bedrooms, outdated countertops, and a heater that made weird clicking noises at night. But it was mine. I picked the curtains. I chose the thrifted dining chairs. I stacked the spice rack alphabetically. It was my space. No ghosts. No lies in the air. No one accidentally using my signature. The silence was both comforting and uncomfortable. The first few weeks after the trial ended, I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting Tyler to show up with flowers or excuses. Or maybe even another police report claiming I defamed him. But he didn't. He vanished from my life the way a stain disappears under bleach. Suddenly, completely, but never without leaving the memory of where it once was. One evening, I sat on my balcony, legs tucked under me, a mug of peppermint tea warming my palms. Below, traffic hummed, and kids played tag near the mailbox cluster. Life was happening all around me, and I was just beginning to let it happen to me. Again. That's when I picked up my journal. I hadn't written in it since the week Tyler was arrested. But the moment I opened it, pages fluttering like breathless lungs, the words poured out. You are not what happened to you. You are what you chose after. And I chose me. Those lines became my mantra. I began therapy not because I thought I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I stayed so long. Why I didn't listen to my gut when it whispered. Why I was so afraid to know the truth even when it was crawling into bed with me every night. Dr. Mason, my therapist, was a quiet woman in her 50s with the kind of voice that made even hard things feel soft. She never judged. She never labeled. She just held up a mirror and asked me what I saw. In those sessions, I confronted the patterns. I saw how Tyler had isolated me slowly, complimenting me one minute, criticizing me the next, making me question myself until I needed his approval to breathe properly. I saw how the version of love I thought I needed was rooted in fear, not safety. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. A few months later, I enrolled in a weekend self-defense class. Not because I feared someone would hurt me, but because I never wanted to feel powerless again. Punch by punch, stance by stance, I reclaimed the parts of myself that Tyler had chipped away at. One afternoon, as I practiced breaking out of a wrist grab, my instructor, a petite, fiercely confident woman named Nora, nodded and said, "You've got fire in your core." I smiled. She didn't know what I'd been through, but somehow, she could still see the heat I'd spent so long trying to smother just to keep a man comfortable. I also reconnected with old friends. Some had distanced themselves during the chaos, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know what to say. Others had never stopped checking in. One night, we gathered at my place. Pizza boxes open, music playing, laughter filling the once silent apartment. At some point, my best friend Jasmine raised her glass and said, "To Rachel, the baddest phoenix I know." I blushed, rolled my eyes, and laughed. But deep down, I accepted it. I was a phoenix. Burned to ashes, yes, but reborn with sharper wings and a better fire alarm. Then came the interview request. A popular women's empowerment podcast wanted to feature my story after someone anonymously submitted my case to them. At first, I hesitated. Did I really want to revisit all that pain in public? But then I thought about how many women might be living in a fog of manipulation, shame, and doubt, just like I was. Maybe if they heard my voice, if they recognized even one small part of my story, they'd get out sooner. Or stand up. Or speak up. So I said yes. The episode aired a week later and went viral within days. Comments flooded in. This gave me the courage to leave. I thought I was alone. I'm not. Thank you for putting words to what I couldn't explain. I didn't go viral for revenge. I went viral for surviving with truth intact. One particularly touching message came from a 19-year-old girl named Emily who had just discovered her boyfriend was tracking her phone without her consent. She wrote, "I never thought someone could do something like that and still smile at you. Your story showed me that manipulation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and calculated. Thank you." I cried after reading her message. Not from sadness, but from pride. I had planted a seed of awakening in someone else. And that was worth every battle. Healing didn't look like a movie montage. It wasn't pretty all the time. Some days I still stared at the ceiling wondering what could have been. Some days I scrolled through photos and felt an ache. But other days, I danced barefoot in my kitchen with coffee in hand and freedom in my bones. And that's what growth looked like, choosing myself again, even when the grief lingered. One chilly morning in October, I walked past the courthouse, the same steps where I once sat shaking with betrayal. This time, I wasn't there for court. I was dropping off flyers for a new community initiative I'd joined, Women Who Rise, a support circle for survivors of emotional and financial abuse. As I posted the flyer on the community board, a woman in her 30s walked up beside me and asked, "Are you the Rachel from the podcast?" I nodded, a little shyly. She smiled. "Your story saved my life." I was signing joint checks I didn't even understand. But I got out. Because of you. We hugged. No words. Just a shared knowing. That's the thing about truth. It echoes. It travels. And when it's shared without shame, it becomes a ladder for someone else to climb out of their own dark pit. By the end of that year, I'd changed my last name back to my maiden name, Rachel Monroe. It felt symbolic. Like washing off the last fingerprints of a chapter that no longer defined me. When the new ID arrived in the mail, I stared at it for a long moment, not just because of the name, but because the woman in the photo had clear eyes, a subtle smile, and a fierce stillness. She knew who she was. She knew what she'd survived. And she knew no one would ever forge her identity again. Not on paper, not in life. The morning after my story broke online felt surreal. I woke up to over 200 missed calls, texts from friends I hadn't heard from in years, and a battery of news notifications. My name, Jessica Langford, was trending nationwide. Headlines screamed, "Woman exposes signature forgery by husband, goes viral with tearful video." Justice served on TikTok, the face behind the forged papers. I blinked at the screen. It didn't feel real, but it was. What started as a single, shaky video of me in my kitchen, explaining what Michael had done, how he betrayed me, how I'd turned him in, was now being shared by influencers, lawyers, women's advocacy groups, and even talk shows. A segment on Good Morning America mentioned my story. A YouTuber did a reaction video that racked up 3 million views overnight, calling me the quiet hero of suburban betrayal. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. But this time, they weren't for Michael. They were for me, for the version of myself that had finally been heard. The comment sections were filled with support. "She's so strong. This happened to my sister. He stole her life. We need more women like her speaking up." The calm way she told her story, chills. Actual chills. Imagine being so bold you forge your wife's signature, then shocked when she outs you and goes viral. There were thousands, then tens of thousands of comments. Women from all over the world shared their own stories of betrayal, of financial manipulation, of men trying to erase their autonomy. What stunned me most, though, were the messages from men. I never understood what financial abuse looked like. Now I do. This changed how I see quiet wives. Michael should be ashamed. Jessica deserves the world. People sent me messages from Brazil, Sweden, South Korea, Kenya. A woman from Ohio DM'd me and said she had just walked away from a fiancé who'd tried to open a loan in her name. "You saved me," she wrote. "You gave me a wake-up call." I couldn't believe it. What I thought was the most humiliating, painful chapter of my life had become a beacon for others. And yet, the fame wasn't always comfortable. Reporters parked outside my house for days. Drones hovered above my backyard. A few tabloids dug into old yearbooks and tried to paint me as the girl who plotted revenge. One headline suggested Michael had triggered a woman on the edge. But the public didn't buy it. The majority stood with me. Every attempt to twist the story failed because the truth was too strong. The video of me walking into the police station, holding the forged documents with trembling hands, that image had become symbolic. It was reposted with the hashtag #SilentStrength. People made artwork. Memes. Podcasts dissected my timeline. Twitter threads praised my calm demeanor and low-key lethal delivery. I wasn't just a woman wronged. I had become a symbol of quiet resistance. Then came the endorsements. A publishing agent reached out, suggesting I write a book. She said the angle of financial betrayal, emotional theft, and unexpected revenge had never been told quite like this. A documentary producer emailed next. Netflix even flirted with the idea of a limited series. And me? I was still the same woman who once cried in her car after Michael belittled her for buying almond milk instead of whole. Only now, the world had heard my scream, even though I hadn't raised my voice. The wildest moment came when a lawyer from another state messaged me on LinkedIn. "Hi, Jessica. I used your video in a financial abuse seminar for new attorneys. You made the law real for them." A domestic violence nonprofit asked me to speak at an upcoming event in D.C. The invitation made me shake.
Me?
A speaker? I was just someone who told the truth. But now I saw that's exactly what the world needed. More truth. More people willing to rip off the mask and say, look, this happened. I'm not ashamed. And I'm not alone. As for Michael, he stayed silent for weeks. Then one day, a podcast he used to co-host released a strange, tense episode. His former co-host awkwardly addressed the situation. Yeah, Mike won't be coming back. We don't condone forgery or theft. That's not what we're about. His business partners cut ties. A company he once advised released a public statement saying they were deeply disturbed by recent allegations. His LinkedIn went dark. His socials were wiped clean. Turns out, when you forge your wife's signature and the world watches her rise, you don't get to hide behind charisma anymore. In the months that followed, I rebuilt. I opened my own consulting business, focused on helping women understand their legal and financial rights. I hosted virtual support groups. My inbox stayed full. Every single day, at least one person reached out saying, "You made me feel seen." That mattered more than any viral views, more than the interviews, more than the temporary fame. Because, at the heart of it all, I had started alone, scared, with a pen shoved into my hand and a paper I didn't sign. And now, I had turned that stolen signature into a signature move. A statement. A legacy. After the social media frenzy settled down and the world moved on to the next scandal, I was left with silence. But this time, it wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was peace. I had taken down a man who had not only forged my signature, but had forged his entire identity around deceiving others. The world had seen it. And now, it was time for me to reclaim the parts of myself that had been buried under gaslighting, manipulation, and fear. It started with a walk. Just a simple walk through the park near my apartment. The same one I used to avoid because Derek had called it a waste of time. As if enjoying stillness, noticing the way light filters through trees, was some kind of weakness. Now I went there on purpose. Without looking over my shoulder. Without rushing. Just breathing. It felt like emotional justice. Not because he was in jail, but because I had finally started listening to the version of myself that had always whispered, "You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not the problem." I started journaling again. Writing not to prove anything, but to remember myself. In one of my entries, I wrote, "Healing is not loud. It's not even public. It's not clapping back or trending hashtags. It's sitting with the ache and realizing it no longer owns you." One evening, I got an unexpected message. It was from Derek's sister, Candace. She had been quiet throughout the entire ordeal. I half expected some kind of passive-aggressive blame, but her message stunned me. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know how deep it all went. "You didn't deserve any of that. I believed him when he said you were unstable. But now I see. I'm proud of you for standing up." I didn't reply right away. I sat with the message. Let it echo. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. And then came the court hearing. It wasn't glamorous. There were no cameras this time. Just a small courtroom and a handful of people who mattered. I didn't need Derek to cry or confess or even apologize. What I needed was accountability, and I got it. He was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for forgery and fraud. As the judge read the final sentence, I looked over at him. For the first time, I didn't see someone powerful. I didn't see the charming man who once made me feel like I wasn't enough unless I was his. I saw a scared, cornered man who had built his life on lies, and it finally caught up with him. He looked at me briefly, but I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. He wasn't my closure. I was. After the sentencing, I stepped outside the courthouse and stood on the steps for a long time. I thought about everything. How a single forged signature had nearly broken me, how gaslighting had made me question my own mind, how speaking up had cost me friends, peace, and safety. And yet, I was still here. Stronger.
Softer. Whole.
I started therapy soon after, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand the version of myself who had stayed so long. The woman who ignored her own instincts. who laughed off red flags, who stayed quiet to keep the peace. And in understanding her, I forgave her. That was the hardest part of all, granting myself grace. Derek's absence became a kind of quiet gift. No more random calls. No more manipulation disguised as affection. No more "I didn't mean it that way." I could finally decorate my space with things he used to mock: crystals, books on feminine energy, soft lighting, incense. He used to say, "Why do you like weird stuff like that?" I used to shrug. Now I say, because it's mine. The greatest justice wasn't his punishment. It was my return to myself. When all the noise faded, when the interview stopped, and when even the last thread of online attention unraveled into silence, I finally had a moment to breathe. And for the first time in years, maybe in my entire adult life, it was my breath, my pace, my life. Not his, not theirs, mine. I didn't return to the same apartment where everything happened. I couldn't. The walls held too many echoes of my silence, my fear, my doubts. I sold the lease, packed up what little joy I had salvaged, and moved into a small but sunlit apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't decorated to perfection.
But it felt honest.
I started decorating slowly, intentionally. Every object had to have meaning. No more neutral because he liked it, or safe because it wouldn't start a fight. I painted one wall a bold, almost defiant teal. I hung an abstract painting from a local artist I admired. I adopted a dog from a shelter and named her Olive, because after all the wars I'd survived, I was ready for peace. Therapy became not just a survival tool, but a ritual. I no longer showed up just to fix the past. I came to shape the future. My therapist, God bless her, once asked me during a session, "If no one ever apologized, would you still be able to live free?" That question haunted me for weeks. And then one morning, sipping coffee on my tiny balcony, Olive curled at my feet, I whispered out loud,
Yes.
"Yes, I can." I began journaling again, not to rant, not to bleed onto pages, but to track joy. I made lists. First morning I woke up and didn't think of him. First time I laughed so hard I cried. Real tears. First time I danced in my kitchen with Olive barking at my feet. First time I didn't check social media to see if people were still talking about the video. And one day, I caught myself humming in the shower. Not a love song.
Not a sad song. Just a tune. Light. Free.
That was the day I knew I had crossed over from surviving into living. Financially, I'd taken the insurance settlement and some unexpected donations from strangers who'd been moved by my story. But I didn't squander it. I met with a financial advisor, a woman, no nonsense, ex-military, sharp as a blade. She helped me set up investments, retirement plans, and a small emergency fund labeled "No Joke" in case of drama. With her encouragement, I enrolled in a course for digital marketing. I had always been curious, and now I had time, focus, and motivation. I started freelancing for small businesses, helping women-owned startups build their brand. It was empowering, not just for them, but for me. The most beautiful surprise came in the form of letters.
Hundreds of them.
Some digital, some handwritten, many from women, a few from men. All different ages, all different races, all different stories. But every single one echoed one truth. You helped me feel less alone. You gave me the courage to leave. You reminded me I'm not crazy. Some days I cried reading them. Other days I wrote back. And one day, I printed them out and filled a shoebox. Olive chewed the corner of one letter once. I didn't even get mad. I made new friends, women I met through work, therapy groups, and even random bookstore conversations. Real friendships. The kind where you don't have to explain your trauma to be understood. The kind where silence isn't awkward, it's respected. One night, over glasses of wine and laughter that came from the belly, one of them asked me, "Do you think you'll ever trust again? Love again?" I didn't answer immediately. I looked out at the stars and thought about it. And then I said, "I think I already do.
Just not the way I used to."
Not blindly, but openly and carefully. Dating wasn't a goal. Healing was. But somewhere in the slow unfolding of my life, I met someone. A man named David.
Quiet. Kind. Bookish.
He never asked about the video. He never made me feel like a trophy or a cautionary tale. He just listened. He noticed when Olive was limping slightly and helped me take her to the vet. He left flowers on my doorstep, not to impress, but because I'd mentioned once that tulips made me feel like spring. And when I finally told him everything, he didn't look away. He didn't pity me. He simply said, "Thank you for trusting me with that." I don't know where that story will go, but for now it feels safe. And that's enough. The biggest change wasn't in the city I moved to or the job I now loved. It was in the mirror. For years, I looked into my own eyes and saw someone waiting to be rescued. Someone desperate for validation. Someone bracing for betrayal. Now, I saw a woman who chose herself. Again. And again. And again. And when people bring up the video now, because sometimes they still do, I smile politely and say, "That chapter taught me how to write my own story." And then I keep walking. With purpose. With peace. With Olive tugging ahead of me, tail wagging, as if to say, "We're not done yet." I don't think I ever imagined that something as painful as betrayal would lead me to something as powerful as peace. Back then, I thought justice meant watching him suffer, hearing the world shout for me, or proving I was right. But now, justice feels quieter, softer. It looks like a full night's sleep. It sounds like my own laughter returning. It feels like waking up and not checking my phone for updates about what the world thinks of me. When I reflect on everything that happened, his forgery, the lies, the media storm, the courtrooms, it's almost like watching someone else's life play out. But I know it was mine because I carry the lessons in every cell of my being. I learned that sometimes we don't get to choose whether we're thrown into chaos. But we do get to choose who we become in the aftermath. I could have let it make me bitter. I could have let the betrayal teach me that trust is dangerous. But instead, it taught me discernment. It taught me how to listen to my gut, how to believe myself the first time I sense something is wrong. And most importantly, it taught me how to choose myself without apology. There's something sacred in choosing not to shrink, not to disappear just because someone tried to erase you, not to carry the shame that wasn't yours to begin with. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening to this who's been through betrayal, whether public or private, it's this. You are allowed to become someone new after pain. In fact, sometimes pain is the only thing powerful enough to shake us loose from who we were never meant to stay. I'm not perfect. I still have moments where the past taps on my shoulder and tries to whisper doubt in my ear. But now I know how to answer back. I remind myself of the woman I've become. The one who didn't just survive, but transformed. This story isn't just about catching a man who forged my signature. It's about reclaiming the pen. It's about rewriting the story others tried to author for me. It's about showing up fully, even when it's hard, and allowing the truth to breathe, no matter how inconvenient it might be for others. And maybe, just maybe, it's about helping someone else find their voice in a world that often tries to silence the truth. Because when one woman stands in her truth, it makes it easier for the next to do the same. So if you're listening to this, and you're in a chapter that feels impossible, please know, this isn't where your story ends. Not even close. You have power you haven't even met yet. You have peace waiting to greet you when the noise fades. And above all, you have the right to heal, to rise, and to start again, without asking for permission. Thank you for walking this journey with me. You are not alone. And your truth? It matters more than you know.